Apparently, Lamar Jackson requested a trade on March 2nd. How do we know? Because he tweeted it out today when John Harbaugh was speaking at the owners' meeting. That's savage. Now, before we get into that, I need to let you know, if you're a serious fantasy football player, or especially if you're a serious dynasty fantasy football player, you need to check out flockfantasy.com/endgame, where you can get our full dynasty rankings, plus articles, bonus videos, plus access to our Discord with our special channels for subscribers only. Flockfantasy.com, 30% off. Not only do you get access to us, but you also get access to Flock Fantasy, Mason from Flock Fantasy, the guys from Fantasy Stock Exchange, the guys from Dynastyland Football. If you are serious about Dynasty football or any fantasy football at all, you have to check it out. Flockfantasy.com/endgame, 30% off. Check it out as soon as we're done. Also, link down in the description. If you don't feel like typing it in, you can just click it. All right, let's get into it. So, like I said, today, Lamar Jackson, during the owners meeting, while John Harbaugh was supposed to speak, which don't think that was an accident. This was definitely on purpose. He did this intentionally. He waited, but he tweeted out something, talking to his fans, saying, "Here's what's up. Let me tell my side of the story." Essentially saying that on March 2nd, he requested a trade. Now, John Harbaugh said, "Look, I'm going into this like he's our guy, like he's our quarterback." In fact, he said, "I'm excited, thinking about Lamar all the time," which sounds a little creepy to me, but okay. So, anyways, this is what you're going to get, right? You're going to get the player saying, "Trade me, I want to be traded." And you're going to get the coach saying, "We're not trading him. He's our guy. He's here. He's it." But this definitely makes it a little more difficult for the Ravens, because now Lamar is talking in a way that makes it sound like he may not want to play this year, right? We saw this with Deshaun Watson, and it did not hurt Deshaun Watson, at least monetarily. It did not hurt Deshaun Watson. He signed that huge deal with Cleveland. Maybe it hurt him, when it came to his performance after being off for 2 years, but it didn't hurt him monetarily, and I don't think it will hurt Lamar Jackson monetarily either. So, if he threatens to hold out at some point, if he doesn't sign his franchise tender and he threatens to hold out, do the Ravens just bite the bullet and say, "Let's just trade him"? Kind of like what Houston eventually had to do with Deshaun. If that happens, here are 5 teams that I think could realistically trade for him, and I've even got some realistic trades here. So let's start with team number 1, and that would be Carolina. Now, Carolina has the number 1 pick in the draft. They could certainly offer that to the Ravens. In fact, I have them offering the number 1 pick this year, their 4th round pick this year, the 114th overall, their 2nd round pick next year, and J.C. Horn. And the Ravens do need a corner, and J.C. Horn is good. He's young. He's developing. He could develop. Maybe the Ravens look at that and say, "Okay, we can get our quarterback at number 1. We get a young cornerback that we actually need, and we get a couple more picks." The Panthers could look at this and say, "Hey, instead of drafting a guy like C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young or whoever they may like, or whoever they say, hey, we just get Lamar Jackson," right? We already know Lamar Jackson is great in the NFL. So certainly Panthers, a team that is definitely in play, in my opinion. Another team that I think certainly in play is the Patriots. Now, the problem for the Patriots is they don't have a young player that I think that the Ravens would want to return. So in this scenario, they're giving up their 1st round pick, of course, this year, the number 14 pick. They're also giving up their 1st round pick next year. Plus, they're giving up their their 2nd round pick this year, and their 4th round pick next year. Would this be enough for the Ravens? I don't think so. I don't really know. I mean, we've seen guys like Stafford and Russ go for, 2 firsts, multiple firsts. Deshaun went for multiple firsts. I don't know if this would be enough. There is some talk that the Patriots are interested. Robert Kraft today, somebody asked Robert Kraft at the owners meeting about it, or I think actually, no, Meek Mill. Yes, Meek Mill texted Robert Kraft. Apparently, Meek Mill and Robert Kraft are texting buddies and said Lamar wants to be a Patriot, and Robert Kraft said that'll be up to Bill Belichick. So, I don't know. I think the Patriots might do this deal. I'm not sure if the Ravens do this deal. I'm not sure if this is enough for the Ravens. But certainly the Patriots sound like they are in the mix. I'm just not sure they have enough to get a deal done. Now, what about my Commanders? They said today there was a report like, oh, no, we're not interested in Lamar Jackson. I don't buy that stuff. You got to at least try. And here's an interesting deal, because one thing you also have to think, if any team that trades for Lamar Jackson, they're going to have to probably sign him. They're going to certainly sign him to a massive contract. The Commanders need cap space. They don't really have a lot of cap space right now, but here's a trade that could get it to work in the cap space, and that's by trading Terry McLaurin. Now, the Ravens desperately need a wide receiver, and Terry McLaurin is a great wide receiver, but he's also going to be 28 years old, so I could see the Commanders parting with him, and he's got a huge contract. He would free up a lot of cap space to where they could make it work for Lamar Jackson. So in this scenario, they're giving up their number 16 pick in the first round, future second, and Terry McLaurin. Again, frees up cap space. And Terry McLaurin, let's be real, I like Terry McLaurin. He's a great wide receiver, but he's not putting up huge monster numbers here. He's been good, he's been productive, but I don't think losing a player like Terry McLaurin to get a quarterback like Lamar Jackson is going to be a huge deal for the Commanders. They drafted Dotson last year. He looked good. They could always go out, sign a veteran, draft a wide receiver this year. So here's a potential trade. I think the one sticking point for the Ravens might be, is the number 16 pick high enough to get a quarterback, in this year's draft class, or is that even second next year enough to get a quarterback to replace Lamar? I don't know. But I think the Commanders are certainly in play. And again, I'm just throwing out example trades. So if you don't agree with the trade, that's fine. But I'm just throwing out examples of teams that I think potentially have a shot and could make a move. And then we have the Texans. The Texans definitely have something to offer, and that's the number 2 pick. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the Falcons. I was looking at it and said, that's the number 8 pick. Sorry, the Falcons. The Falcons, definitely another team being linked here. They have the number 8 pick, which is definitely more enticing, because if the Ravens are looking at somebody like Anthony Richardson as a potential Lamar replacement, there's a chance he's there at number 8. They'd also give up another first. And then what I like here is they're giving up their guard, Chris Lindstrom, who's a talented guard. The Ravens just lost one of their starting guards in free agency to the Broncos. And he's frees up a lot of cap space for the Falcons. Now, the Falcons have cap space, but he would free up a lot of cap space, so making a deal for Lamar would be very easy for them. So, yes, it hurts their offensive line a little bit, and the Ravens need the offensive linemen. So maybe the Ravens look at this and say, okay, we can bolster our offensive line. They'll save a little bit in cap room. They'll get the number 8 pick. Maybe they can get Richardson, and they get a first next year. I definitely think this is a possibility. Falcons definitely a team I think should and could make a move. And then another team. Oh, no. Okay, I guess I've... All right, and then the final team, the Lions. The Lions make a lot of sense. And if you look here, you're going to say, well, this is a big overpay. You're giving up the number 6 pick. You're giving up the number 48 pick. You're giving up a future first, and you're giving up Jared Goff. Well, Jared Goff is for the cap room, because the Lions can't have Jared Goff making $30 million and Lamar making $30 million on the roster. And the Ravens could just cut Jared Goff and only take a $10 million dead cap hit, which would save them over $20 million of cap space, because under the franchise tag, Lamar is going to get $32 million. So this is a deal where if the Lions feel like, hey, Lamar puts us over the hump, and Lamar would put them over the hump, then perhaps they do go out and say, look, here's a deal. We'll give you the number 6. You can get Richardson, Levy's, whoever's there at the 6. You get our first next year, which will probably be a late first, but you get our first next year. You also get our number 48 here this year. And you can take Jared Goff and you can cut him and save yourself the cap space. And the Lions can then sign Jared Goff. And then I wanted to put Houston in here. I don't know what happened. Didn't have him on the slide. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. And then I do see your guys' questions. I will get to those. But I know I had Houston in here. If I can just go over it real quick. Okay, so for Houston, I don't have the slide. I apologize, I don't have the slide, so you're just going to have to bear with me. But Houston would give it the number 2 pick, which obviously makes sense because they can go with Stroud or Bryce Young, assuming they like those guys, or Richardson if they like Richardson. Their 2024 first, plus their number 33 pick this year. So, anyways, I said 5 teams. I think that might have been 6 or 7 teams. I'll have to update the title. But those are some of the teams I think have a realistic shot at Lamar Jackson if the Ravens do indeed trade him. Right now, it does not sound like that's in the Ravens' plan. But again, if Lamar threatens to hold out and says, I'm not signing the franchise tender and I'm never playing for the Ravens again, maybe he's just done, they got to do what they got to do. So this is one I do want to bring this up from Mauricio. Thank you, Mauricio, for the question. Hopefully I pronounced your name right. He's saying Miami trade Tua and their number 1 pick next year. I've heard this, and I could see this making sense. If the Ravens like Tua and if the Dolphins really like Lamar, I could see this definitely making sense. I don't see it happening, but it does make sense. So I definitely wanted to cover that. So he's saying taking his talents to South Beach. And then, yeah, I did talk about the Texans. Yep, the Texans. I don't know why. I forgot to put them in the slide, so you didn't get to see it up there. But like I said, I do think the Texans could move the number 2 pick, their first next year, and their second round pick. Because remember, Houston has 2 first round picks and the 33rd pick. They have 3 picks inside the top 33. So they could trade the 2, the 33, still have a first round pick and get Lamar, and then give up, like their first next year, but get a franchise quarterback and then still draft defense in the first round if that's where they decide to go, or wide receiver, or whatever, offensive line, whatever they decide to go in the first round. So I definitely think Houston makes a lot of sense. I just forgot to put them on the slide. So there you go, guys. All right, well, so that's about it. I just thought I should get on here, should talk about this. It's a big news right now. It definitely sounds to me like it's heading either to Lamar not signing his franchise tender and or the Ravens trading him. It sounds like from Lamar's point of view, if I show this his tweet again, if you read this tweet here that Lamar sent out today, he's basically saying farewell to the Baltimore fans. So I really do wonder if that bridge is burned. If Lamar just feels like, hey, the Ravens, I'm done with these guys. They didn't want me. Let's just move on. So definitely this is something we're going to have to seriously monitor, especially if you play Dynasty, of course, even for redraft, because this would definitely change things for guys like Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman. It would obviously change things for wherever he goes. I mean, if he goes to Houston or wherever, you got to bump up those wide receivers. So don't forget, guys, if you're serious about Dynasty or fantasy football, check it out, flockfantasy.com/endgame. Everything you need there to get the absolute biggest edge in your leagues and dominate. I appreciate you guys being on here. I'll take one more question here real quick before we go from Uskol Kinra. Sorry, I know I butchered that. Do you think the Ravens are going to try to tank now? I don't think so. I think it depends on what they get in a package, but I think they're going to still want to stay competitive. That's why I think they're going to want an early first, and then some of those players, like I said, like if they can get a young corner like J.C. Horn, a guard to fill in on the offensive line, or a wide receiver like McLaurin, I think they would do it because I think they want to stay competitive right now. So anyways, guys, appreciate you as always. If you haven't yet, subscribe, like the video. Appreciate you being on here at this late hour. Don't forget, we mock draft tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully you can join us. We'll see you then. Have a great night.